Imagine being a young priest, training your whole life to serve God in the magnificent temple in Jerusalem. Then, in an instant, everything is ripped away. Your city is conquered. The temple, the very house of God, is burned to the ground, and you're dragged away as a captive to a foreign land. Your entire calling, your future, everything you ever dreamed of, gone. This is exactly where the story of the prophet Ezekiel begins. He's in exile, in a place of total brokenness, where all hope seems lost. But this is the crucial part. God wasn't finished with Ezekiel. In fact, God was about to use him in one of the most extraordinary ways in all of Scripture. He would see visions that would boggle the mind, perform symbolic acts that would shock an entire nation, and speak messages that would carry God's people through their darkest hour. This is the story of Ezekiel, the visionary, the watchman, the man who proved that even in exile, God's presence never ever leaves his people. The year is 597 BC. The mighty Babylonian Empire has crushed Jerusalem. King Nebuchadnezzar has deported thousands of Jews, taking the best and the brightest, the royal family, the skilled workers, and the priests. Among them is Ezekiel, a young man from a priestly family who should have been starting his service in the temple. Instead, he's a refugee by the Kebar River in Babylon. His home, his country, his purpose all stripped away. The identity of God's people is crumbling, and everyone is asking the same devastating questions. Where is God in all this? Has he abandoned us? Is this the end? The people are scattered, confused, and utterly hopeless. Some are even saying God's power is limited to Jerusalem, that he can't reach them here in Babylon. But they were about to discover just how wrong they were. God isn't confined by geography. He isn't trapped in a building, and he was about to show up in Babylon in a way no one could have ever predicted. It happens when Ezekiel is 30 years old, the very year he should have been ordained as a priest. As he's by the river, the heavens tear open. Ezekiel sees a vision that's almost impossible to put into words. A storm cloud flashing with lightning, surrounded by brilliant light. And from the center, 4 incredible living creatures emerge. Each has 4 faces: a human, a lion, an ox, and an eagle. They have wings and are accompanied by mysterious wheels within wheels, covered with eyes, all moving in perfect, synchronized harmony. And above it all, Ezekiel sees a throne. And on that throne is a figure shining with the likeness of the glory of the Lord. Ezekiel immediately falls on his face. The very same glory of God that once filled the temple in Jerusalem is right here in Babylon, in the land of exile. God has not abandoned them. He is with them. Then God speaks, "Son of man, I am sending you to the people of Israel. They are a rebellious nation, stubborn and hard-hearted. But whether they listen or not, they will know that a prophet has been among them." God then hands Ezekiel a scroll filled with words of lament and woe. "Eat this," God commands. Ezekiel eats the scroll, and it tastes as sweet as honey in his mouth. But its message is bitterer. message of judgment and hard truths. Then God gives him his life's mission. Son of man, I have made you a watchman for the house of Israel. When you hear a word from my mouth, you shall give them warning from me. A watchman, someone who stands on the city wall, whose job is to sound the alarm when danger approaches. That's Ezekiel's new calling, not to make people feel comfortable, but to warn them, to tell them the truth, and to call them back to God. Now, this is where Ezekiel's ministry gets really unusual. God doesn't just tell him to preach sermons. He instructs him to perform a series of dramatic, symbolic acts like prophetic street theater, designed to get everyone's attention. First, God tells him to take a clay brick, sketch the city of Jerusalem on it, and then build a mini siege around it. Then, he has to lie on his left side for 390 days, and then on his right side for 40 days, eating tiny, rationed portions of food. It was a shocking, uncomfortable, and impossible to ignore display. The message was clear. The siege of Jerusalem is real, and it's going to last a long time. Next, God tells Ezekiel to take a sword and shave his head and beard. He's to divide the hair into 3 parts. He burns 1/3, strikes another third with the sword, and scatters the last third to the wind. The meaning was terrifying. The people of Jerusalem would be destroyed by famine, war, and exile. Only a tiny remnant would be spared. Then, in the middle of the night, Ezekiel packs a bag and digs through the wall of his own house, acting like an escaping fugitive. He covers his face so he can't see where he's going. This was a direct prophecy of what King Zedekiah of Jerusalem would do, try to escape in the night, only to be captured and blinded. Ezekiel's entire life became a living sermon, a message from God acted out for all to see. But Ezekiel wasn't just a performer, he was a visionary. God pulled back the curtain of reality and showed him things happening in the spiritual realm. In one vision, God transports him to Jerusalem and reveals the corruption inside the temple. He sees elders secretly worshipping idols, women weeping for false gods, and men bowing down to the sun in the Lord's own courtyard. The holy temple has been completely defiled. And then Ezekiel witnesses something heartbreaking. The glorious presence of God begins to move. It lifts from the Holy of Holies, moves to the threshold of the temple, then to the city gate, and finally it departs from the city altogether. God is leaving his house because his people have driven him away with their sin. But then comes one of the most famous visions in the entire Bible, the Valley of Dry Bones. God takes Ezekiel to a valley filled with countless skeletons, completely dry, utterly dead, beyond all hope. God asks him, "Son of man, can these bones live?" Ezekiel wisely answers, "Lord, you alone know." God tells him, "Prophesy to these bones." So Ezekiel starts speaking to dead skeletons. As he speaks, there's a rattling sound. Bones come together, tendons and flesh appear. Skin covers them. An army of bodies lies there, but they have no life. Then God says, "Prophesy to the breath." Ezekiel does, and breath enters them. They stand up, a vast living army. The meaning was powerful. The nation of Israel felt dead, cut off, and hopeless in exile. But God can bring life from death. He can restore what seems impossible. The exile is not the end. A resurrection is coming, and in his final great vision, God shows Ezekiel a new, perfect temple, described in meticulous detail. There's pure worship and a magnificent river flowing from the temple, bringing life and healing wherever it goes. And then, the most beautiful part, the glory of the Lord filled the temple. God is coming back. The glory that departed will return. Hope is real. Restoration is promised. Through all of this, Ezekiel never lost sight of his primary calling, to be a watchman. God laid out his responsibility in stark terms. If you see a wicked person heading for destruction, and you do not warn them, their blood will be on your hands. But if you warn them and they refuse to listen, you have done your duty. So Ezekiel spoke the truth, even when it was hard, even when people called him crazy. He warned them that Jerusalem would fall, just as he said. And in 586 BC, it happened. The temple was burned. The city was destroyed. The watchman was proven right. But he didn't just deliver messages of judgment. He also spoke of hope, a new covenant, a new heart, and a future restoration that God would bring. So what can we learn from Ezekiel's incredible story? First, God's presence is not limited by our circumstances. He showed up in Babylon, in exile. He can show up in your life, no matter where you are or how dark it seems. Second, God sometimes uses dramatic and unconventional methods to get our attention. Be open to Him working in ways you don't expect. Third, like Ezekiel, we all called to be watchmen in some way to speak truth with love and warn people of spiritual danger. Fourth, the vision of the dry bones teaches us that no situation is truly dead. God can bring resurrection and new life to the most hopeless parts of our lives. And finally, God keeps His promises. Ezekiel prophesied about a new heart, a new spirit, and the return of God's glory. Even in judgment, God's plan was always aimed at redemption. Ezekiel's story is one of bizarre visions and difficult messages, but at its heart, it's a powerful story of God's faithfulness. When all seemed lost, God didn't abandon His people. He sent a watchman to stand on the wall, to speak His truth, and to cast a vision of hope for the future. He reminds us that even in exile, God is present. Even in judgment, He offers hope. And even when everything seems dead, He can bring life. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this.